I'm going to go ahead and get my strawberry fruit jam prepped for our class. And I've got my mise en place all set up here. I've got my strawberries. I've already hulled them. I've got my blender here that actually has a food processor attachment to it, but you could use a regular blender attachment. And I've gone ahead and cleaned these. I've removed the stems. So I've got my 4.5 cups here. I've also got a pan that I'm going to be cooking this in. And I just wanted to show you really quick. When I get home from shopping for my strawberries, I always like to put them in a container like this. I like to store them upside down with the stem side down and the berry side up. And that just helps keep it from, keep my berries from getting gross, for lack of a better term. You'll notice that, depending on where you get your berries from, if they come in the plastic containers, they tend to sweat on the bottom. And so as I was prepping these, I pulled out all of the, sweaty berries. The ones that are they're going to go bad the fastest. So I pulled all of those out, and those are the ones that I'm going to use to make my fruit jam. And because I'm prepping this, today is actually Thursday, so I'm prepping this a couple days early. I find that supermarket strawberries tend to go bad pretty quick. So that is why I've got my container here prepared with my berries that I'm going to be using in my tart. And this container actually has a lift in it it's got little slits in it. So there's actually airflow. And then it's got some airflow here as well. This is from the Container Store. I have lots of these in my refrigerator to keep everything organized. So I just wanted to point out, this is how I prep my berries and keep them nice. Because obviously when we build our tart, we want to have these pretty berries. And, we don't want berries that have begun to really, ferment. So that is how I go about prepping my strawberries. So these will just go in my refrigerator until I'm ready to use them for my tart. In the meantime, I've got my 4.5 cups here. I'm just going to put them in my Ninja here, and I'm going to blitz these down until it turns into a puree. And then I'm going to take a mesh sieve because I don't enjoy seeds in my jam. So I'm going to go ahead and use a very fine mesh sieve, and I will sieve out the seeds before I continue on to making my actual jam. So right now I'm just making my fresh homemade puree. Alternatively, you could buy some puree in the store. It is somewhat hard to find and it will be very expensive. So I would just make some homemade. So I'm going to go ahead and put my top on. I'll blitz these down, and then we will be ready to move on to the next step. My strawberries are nice and pureed. So get a nice puree going here. I wanted to show you the difference in sieves. So this is a professional sieve, and you can see that the mesh is very finely woven. This is a regular one, and you can see the holes are a little bit different. They're a little bigger, and they are not tightly woven. So this will get out all of your seeds. This is my preference. I have had this mesh sieve for about, oh my gosh, like 13 years, I think. It's the one I actually used in my bakery as well. So it's extremely durable, and yeah, I've had it forever. I also use it for pastry creams and custards and things like that, lemon curd, just to strain out any little egg bits. So I'm going to go ahead and very carefully add this to my sieve. I want to get out all the goodness. And then I'm just going to work it down into the sieve. It's going to take a few minutes. It's a lot of strawberries. You just want to keep scraping until you get all of that deliciousness into our pan. So I have been working this down for a few minutes. You can see how much strawberry puree is in my pan, and you can see how much is left in my sieve. I'm just going to keep working this down until I'm satisfied with what's left here in my sieve. So I just keep working it back and forth, and then I'll kind of come through and scrape this down, scrape the sides down, and then just start again, just moving back and forth with my spatula. So this looks like it's getting to be about as good as it gets. I don't have a ton seeping through anymore. So I'll just give this one good last mash, and then I'll come through and scrape these sides down, and then we will be ready to start making our jam. Okay, so I've got my puree here in my pan, and I'm going to go ahead and add to this my lemon juice, as well as my rum. And I just like to add rum because it just heightens the flavor of the fruit. So I've just got a little bit of rum here. And I'm going to go ahead and start my burner here. And I just want this to start to heat up and simmer. So I'm going to get that going. And then I've also got my sugar here. I've got it in a dish with a little whisk, and I've got my gelatin. My pectin. You also always want to combine your apple pectin with your sugar and make sure that is nice and whisked in. It just, having that incorporated really helps to ensure that you don't get lots of like lumpy bits. So I just give this a really good mix, and I'll set that off to the side. And it's going to take a few minutes for my puree to start to simmer. And then once it starts to simmer, I'm going to slowly, very slowly sprinkle in my sugar and pectin. You don't want to dump the whole thing in because you will get lumpy, clumpy bits in here, like big bits. So you slow and steady wins the race. So I'm just going to let this simmer, and then I'll start to slowly sprinkle in my pectin that's mixed with my sugar. And then I'll go ahead and let this cook once I add that for about 4 to 5 minutes. And then I'll come back and show you kind of what that looks like when the jam starts to thicken, and just knowing when it's done. And this isn't, so I'm using gas. This isn't quite on medium. You can see my flame is pretty low. So it's been a little bit, a few minutes, and my puree is starting to move about. I am at, everybody always asks, what's the temperature, Michelle? I'm at about 175 on average. my liquid is. So I don't want this to get crazy. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got it low. And I'm going to start sprinkling in my mixture. Just sprinkling it in and stirring. Just make sure you give it a nice good stir. Keep it nice and incorporated. Again, I'm using gas, so I don't want this to poof up and start to overflow on me. So this is going to add our sweetness, and it is also going to be what thickens. And I'm actually going to switch over here to my whisk. There we go. Okay, so I've got all of my sugar and pectin incorporated. So now it's just a matter of letting this thicken up. You don't want to crank the heat up. It's better to just let this go slow. It will thicken up. There's between adding the pectin and the natural pectins in our lemon juice, it will thicken up. Not quite there yet. So from the time that you add the sugar and the pectin, it should take about 4 to 5 minutes. You want to make sure that it doesn't start to stick to the bottom. So that's why I'm constantly stirring it, is so that it doesn't get baked on. So you don't want to walk away from this, because if you do, it's going to overflow. It will boil up, and it'll boil over, and it will get stuck on the bottom, and you will have a real bummer of a mess on your hands. So I'm at about 180 on average. If I stop stirring, you can see, even though I'm in between medium and low, it starts to look like hot lava. So that's why you want to just kind of give it a whisk to make sure that it doesn't start to cook on the bottom of our pan. So let's do another test and see where we're at. So I'll put a little bit there on my spoon rest. Give it a second or two before I do the swipe test. So let's see where we're at. Better, but not quite. I can tell it's definitely getting thicker though. Definitely starting to coat a little bit more. Just gonna let it do its thing. Don't want to rush it. So we are at about 195 degrees. And I've gone ahead and taken some out. I can tell we're getting super close. That's starting to look good. I have some that is here on the back of the spoon. You can see it's definitely firming up, which is great. I'm actually, I'm happy with this. It's not racing back towards itself. So this is exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead, turn off my stove. And then I'm just going to, I'm going to transfer this to a glass container, a glass storage container, and I will put a piece of press and seal or plastic wrap. I use press and seal. You can use plastic wrap. I'm going to push it down onto the surface of the jam, and then I will store it in the refrigerator until I'm ready to make my tart. So again, you know, this is what we're looking for. It's not dripping off my finger. It's not racing back towards each other, towards itself. It's coated the back of my spoon. It's staying very nicely on there. You'll be able to feel this at home. You can feel that it's starting to get jelly-like. It's not going to get, you know, rubbery. I like to stop at this point because it will firm up more as it's sitting. And I don't want this to be like rock hard because I will be piping it into my tart. And so I want to be able to work with it. So again, I'll go ahead and put this in a glass container. I'll put some plastic wrap, push it down onto it. I'm going to let it cool first, and then I'll push the plastic down onto it. So I'll leave it out on the counter till it cools down, put some plastic wrap on it, seal it up, put it in the refrigerator, and then on the day that I make my tart, I will pull it out, let it come to room temperature. So you're going to want to pull this out at least an hour before class starts so that it can sit on the counter and come to room temperature. And that's it. And that is how you make our fruit jam filling. You also learn how to make your own puree. So I just wanted to show you, I put it in a Pyrex container, and as you can see, it made 2.5 cups. So this filling is going to be, again, used in our tart. However, you can also use this to do filling in between a cake. So you can also use it for filling in French macarons. Lots of great uses for it. So let this cool down. Plastic wrap, fridge. Take it out an hour before class starts to let it come to room temperature, and then we'll be able to use it.